She wore the uniform, she had the smile, but beneath the surface, there was one thing she couldn't tolerate: imperfection. And in the quiet corners of a Kentucky town, a baby girl paid the price. Brooke Skylar Richardson was the golden girl of Carlisle, Ohio. At 18, she was a high school senior, an honors student, and a varsity cheerleader. Her social media was filled with sunny selfies, group photos, and motivational quotes. Her family lived in a modest suburban home, the kind where birthdays were always celebrated and report cards hung on the fridge. She wasn't loud or rebellious. Teachers described her as quiet but polite. To most people, Skylar seemed like the kind of girl who stayed out of trouble. Her mother, Kim Richardson, was deeply involved in Skylar's life, tracking every calorie, every outfit, every college application. There were high expectations, but also an air of protectiveness. Everything about Skylar's world was curated, controlled, and carefully contained. But no one, not even her closest friends, knew what she was hiding. In early 2017, Skylar was keeping a secret. She had gotten pregnant after a brief relationship with a boy named Brandon, but she told no one, not her best friend, not even her mother. Her search history was filled with terms like how to hide pregnancy and how soon do you show. Skylar's body became a battleground. Already struggling with an eating disorder, she couldn't reconcile the pregnancy with the image she was expected to maintain. She wore loose clothing, she avoided changing in front of teammates, and she told herself it would all go away. She managed to keep the pregnancy hidden for 8 months, until one late night in May, everything came undone. On May 7, 2017, just 2 days after her senior prom, Skylar gave birth alone in her bathroom. There were no hospital lights, no doctor, no crib waiting in a nursery. What happened next would divide the nation. Skylar later told investigators the baby was stillborn. She said she didn't know what else to do, so she wrapped the newborn in a towel, went into her backyard, dug a shallow hole, and buried her. She didn't scream. She didn't ask for help. She texted her mom the next morning. "I'm literally speechless with how happy I am. My belly is back." 2 months passed. No one suspected anything, until a gynecologist, suspicious of Skylar's previous visit, contacted police. Investigators searched the Richardson home and found the remains of a baby girl in the backyard. The media called her Baby Annabelle. Skylar was arrested and charged with aggravated murder, involuntary manslaughter, child endangerment, and abuse of a corpse. Prosecutors painted her as cold, calculating, obsessed with image. The defense claimed she was traumatized, confused, and scared. Forensic pathologists disagreed on key points: whether the baby had been born alive, and whether there were signs of burning on the bones. Skylar's confession was shaky, obtained after hours of questioning without a lawyer present. In September 2019, the jury found her not guilty of murder, manslaughter, or child endangerment. She was convicted only for abuse of a corpse and sentenced to 3 years probation. Skylar never served prison time. She enrolled in community college, living quietly under a cloud of infamy. Her community was deeply divided. Some saw a scared teen. Others saw a manipulator who prioritized her appearance over a child's life. The judge, while delivering her sentence, said, "Your choices before, during, and after birth show a grotesque disregard for life." Baby Annabelle's grave is marked by a simple stone. No birthday, no photos, just a name. And for the girl who never got to cry, never got to be held, never got a chance, there will never be a first word. Some secrets are buried, others are betrayed by those closest to us. In the next case, we head to West Virginia, where a bright young girl named Skylar Neese thought she had found forever friends. She was wrong. Skylar Neese was the only child of Dave and Mary Neese, a straight-A student from Star City, West Virginia. She loved reading, writing in her diary, and watching old episodes of Law Order. She wasn't the popular girl, but she was witty, loyal, and clever beyond her years. She worked part-time at a local Wendy's and dreamed of becoming a criminal defense attorney. At University High School, Skylar had formed an inseparable bond with 2 girls, Sheila Eddy and Rachel Schoaf. They posted selfies in bathroom mirrors, made lip-sync videos on YouTube, and tweeted each other inside jokes daily. To outsiders, they were just typical teen girls. Skylar's parents welcomed her friends like family. She and Sheila had known each other since 2nd grade. Rachel was newer but easily folded into the trio. But by the summer of 2012, cracks in the friendship had started to show. Skylar's tweets started turning bitter. She wrote things like, "You doing like that is why I will never completely trust you. Too bad my friends are having lives without me." Unbeknownst to her parents, Skylar was caught in a shifting triangle of loyalty, jealousy, and growing resentment. She felt pushed out, excluded, yet she kept trying to belong. Sheila was known for her charm and manipulation, always getting her way, always demanding attention. Rachel, raised in a conservative religious household, was under her own private pressures. By July, Skylar had told someone she knew too much. No one knew exactly what she meant, but her so-called best friends did. And they had already made a plan. On July 5th, 2012, Skylar climbed out of her bedroom window just after midnight. Eating her friends for a late-night joyride, Sheila and Rachel picked her up in a silver Toyota Camry. They laughed, drove around, smoked, and then headed into rural Pennsylvania. They pulled off on a dirt road near a patch of woods. They told Skylar they'd forgotten a lighter. When she turned around to help find it, they counted to 3, and they stabbed her. More than 50 times. Skylar fought back, leaving Rachel with a gash on her knee. But it wasn't enough. The girls had brought kitchen knives, paper towels, clean clothes, a shovel. When the ground was too hard to dig, they dragged Skylar's body under branches, covered her with rocks, and drove home like nothing happened. For 6 months, no one knew the truth. Skylar's parents believed she'd run away, but she'd left her phone charger, her toothbrush, and her wallet behind. Security footage showed her sneaking out, but not coming back. Investigators combed through social media and phone records. The story began to fracture. Rachel cracked first. In January 2013, she walked into a church with her mother and confessed, "We stabbed her." She led police to Skylar's body, half frozen, decomposing in the woods. Sheila was arrested months later, still pretending to help search for her missing friend. Both girls were charged as adults. The motive? Rachel later said, "We just didn't like her anymore." Rachel Schoaf pled guilty to second-degree murder and was sentenced to 30 years. Sheila Eddy pled guilty to first-degree murder and received life with parole eligibility after 15 years. Skylar's parents turned their grief into purpose, pushing for Skylar's Law, legislation that requires immediate public alerts for missing children, even if they're considered runaways. Dave and Mary Neese never found peace, but they found the truth, and they made sure Skylar's name wouldn't be forgotten. Skylar's diary was filled with doodles, quotes, and lists of things she wanted to do. Go to college, fall in love, visit New York City. She never got the chance. And for the girl who trusted the wrong people, there will never be another page. Sometimes, evil hides behind mascara and matching friendship bracelets. And sometimes, it takes a mother to pull back the curtain. Next, we examine the twisted relationship between Sante Kimes and her teenage son Kenny, a mother-son duo who left a trail of bodies across the country. Shocking, yes, but the signs were always there. To the outside world, Sante Kimes seemed like an eccentric socialite. Born in Oklahoma in 1934, she was married to a self-made real estate developer, wore designer clothes, and had homes in Las Vegas and California. She kept up appearances, lavish parties, photos in glossy magazines. A perfect son, Kenneth Kenny Kimes, born when Sante was in her 40s. Kenny was raised in wealth. He went to private schools, played tennis, and called his mother his best friend. To many, their relationship looked unusually close, but harmless. He was the obedient son. She was the doting mother. Behind closed doors, Sante was more than just controlling. She was training him, not to succeed, but to deceive. Sante had always blurred the line between charm and con. Her rap sheet included grand theft, arson, insurance fraud, and shoplifting. She once kept a maid imprisoned in her home. Another time, she impersonated a Saudi princess. When her husband passed in 1994, Sante's cons escalated, and she brought Kenny into the fold. Together, they ran scams across the country, writing bad checks, forging documents, stealing identities. Kenny followed her orders without question. He later said, "I loved her more than life." But it wasn't love. It was dependence, indoctrination, control. And when money started running out, Sante found new prey: lonely older women. Wealthy, vulnerable, disposable. In June 1998, Irene Silverman, an 82-year-old Manhattan socialite, disappeared. She owned a $10 million townhouse on the Upper East Side, where Sante and Kenny had recently moved in. They claimed to be mother and son. They carried no luggage. And within days, Irene began to feel uneasy. She wrote notes to herself, complaints about their odd behavior, how she suspected they were stealing from her. And then, on July 5th, Irene vanished. The Kimeses had already fled. Police found Irene's home looted, phones rewired, files missing. They were caught in a stolen car in Atlantic City, carrying fake passports, wigs, handcuffs, and documents granting them power of attorney over Irene's estate. They had planned to erase her and take everything. Irene's body was never found. The trial riveted the nation. A mother-son con artist team charged with murder and fraud. The prosecution laid out a chilling portrait: two people bound by blood, bonded by crime. In jailhouse letters, Sante coached Kenny's testimony, calling herself "your soldier" and instructing him to deny, deny, deny. But Kenny eventually broke. He confessed, described how they strangled Irene with a pillow, how they burned her body, and how, despite everything, he still loved his mother. Sante denied everything. Kenny took the stand against her. In 2000, both were convicted of murder, conspiracy, grand larceny, and forgery. They were sentenced to more than 120 years in prison each. Sante Kimes died in prison in 2014. She never expressed remorse. Kenny Kimes remains incarcerated in New York. In interviews, he speaks softly, almost politely. He still calls her mother. Irene Silverman's body was never recovered, but her legacy lives on through the people who loved her: friends, neighbors, the tenants she cared for like family, and for the woman who opened her doors to strangers. There will never be a final goodbye. Some crimes are born from manipulation. Others come from the innocence of trust. In our next case, a quiet babysitter in Wisconsin disappears, and what her best friend knows will shatter the entire town. Stephanie Crow was just 15. Sweet, responsible, a trusted daughter and a doting big sister. In her quiet Wisconsin town of Mount Horeb, Stephanie was known as the kind of girl you could depend on. But it wasn't Stephanie who went missing. It was Teresa Halbach who was gone. And behind that headline lay another name few knew: Morgan Geyser. Born in 2002, Morgan was bright, artistic, and shy. She lived in Waukesha, Wisconsin, a safe suburban place where kids rode bikes and parents trusted curfews. Morgan's best friend was Anissa Wire. The two were nearly inseparable. They shared stories, drawings, even their own fantasy worlds. But one of those fantasies, one they found online, would lead them into something no one saw coming: a myth, a monster. A name whispered in forums: Slender Man. Morgan and Anissa became obsessed with Slender Man, an internet urban legend born from creepypasta forums. A faceless figure in a black suit said to stalk and torment his victims. They believed he was real, and worse, they believed he could hurt their families if they didn't offer him something. Morgan, especially, began showing signs of mental instability. Her drawings became darker, her journal filled with violent imagery. But no one, not teachers, not parents, recognized how deep the delusion had become. They planned it for months. They picked the target carefully, someone who trusted them, someone innocent. Peyton Leutner, known to friends as Bella. She had been friends with Morgan since 4th grade. She had no idea what they were planning. It was May 31st, 2014. The three girls had a sleepover, celebrating Morgan's birthday. They painted nails, watched movies, ate snacks. They went to a local park, then to nearby woods. And that's where it happened. Morgan stabbed Peyton 19 times. Anissa stood nearby, encouraging her. When Peyton screamed and begged, they told her to lie still so the blood would come out faster. Then, they left her, alone, bleeding in the dirt. But Peyton didn't die. Crawling, sobbing, She dragged herself out of the woods to a nearby path where a cyclist found her and called 911. She survived. Barely. The case made national headlines. Two 12-year-old girls, charged as adults, facing decades behind bars. Psychologists found that Morgan was suffering from early-onset schizophrenia. She believed Slender Man was real. She heard voices. She saw hallucinations. Anissa, less psychotic, more deluded, had been pulled in by fear and friendship. The community was stunned. These weren't hardened criminals. They were middle schoolers. Morgan pled guilty to attempted first-degree intentional homicide and was found not guilty by reason of mental disease. She was committed to a psychiatric institution for up to 40 years. Anissa received 25 years in a mental health facility. In 2021, she was conditionally released to live with her father under GPS monitoring. Peyton Leutner spent weeks in the hospital, years in therapy, but she lived. In rare interviews, she's spoken with calm clarity. I don't think much of them anymore. If I let them affect me, they win. Today, Peyton is in college, studying to help others. But the scars, physical and emotional, remain. The woods are still there, quiet, empty. But for the girl who went in with two friends and came out bleeding, there will never be another sleepover. What makes a monster? Sometimes it's belief. Sometimes it's betrayal. In the next case, two teenage girls make a deadly pact, and one teenage boy ends up buried in the desert. Adrienne Jones was athletic, popular, and had big dreams. She was a high school sophomore in Mansfield, Texas, a town just outside Fort Worth. Honor roll student, track star. But this story isn't about Adrienne. It's about David Graham and Diane Zamora, two teens at the top of their class. David was a star cadet, charming and disciplined, on track for the Air Force Academy. Diane was driven, intense, and ambitious, accepted into the Naval Academy, both just 18 years old. They were a power couple, engaged before college, in love since junior high. To everyone around them, they were focused, faithful, destined for greatness. But in private, their love had curdled into something obsessive, something dangerous. Behind closed doors, Diane was controlling. David was guilty. In November 1995, David confessed something during an emotional late-night talk. He said he had cheated, just once, with a girl on the track team. Her name was Adrienne Jones. Diane's reaction was immediate and furious. She demanded details, dates, how it happened. Then she said the words that would seal Adrienne's fate. She has to die. David didn't resist. He wanted to prove his love. So the two made a plan. Together. They'd lure Adrienne out of her house, drive her somewhere remote, and eliminate the one mistake standing between them. On December 3, 1995, David called Adrienne late at night. He asked her to sneak out, said they'd just drive and talk. No big deal. She believed him. She slipped out of her home, barefoot, coatless. David drove. Diane hid in the back seat. They reached a desolate field. Diane lunged forward, hit Adrienne in the head with a weight. Adrienne stumbled out of the car, injured, confused. David followed. He pulled out a 9mm pistol, shot her once in the face, then again in the head. She collapsed in the grass, and they drove away. The next morning, a farmer found her body. The case went cold for nearly a year. No suspects, no motive. Adrienne's grieving parents were left in the dark, until Diane slipped. In August 1996, during a dorm conversation at the Naval Academy, she told her roommate, "My fiancé and I killed a girl." At first, no one believed it, but the roommate reported it, and Texas Rangers soon found enough evidence to arrest both teens. Diane admitted everything. David confessed, then recanted, then confessed again. They were tried separately. Both faced capital murder charges. In 1998, Diane was convicted and sentenced to life in prison with parole eligibility after 40 years. David received the same sentence. Neither has shown true remorse. Adrienne's family never recovered. Her mother, Linda Jones, said, "She was a good girl, not perfect, but she didn't deserve this." Diane and David remain in separate Texas prisons, both eligible for parole in the 2030s. Both still describe the crime as a tragic mistake. But it wasn't a mistake. It was planned. Adrienne never saw it coming. She trusted someone she had once kissed and followed him into the dark. And for the girl who was erased to save a relationship, there will never be a wedding day. When love turns toxic, it can destroy two lives. But when ambition is added to the mix, it can set off a firestorm. In our next case, a straight-A student brings a hammer to her friend's house. And nothing is ever the same. Rachel Wade was a 19-year-old honor graduate from Clearwater, Florida. Quiet, polite, and hardworking. She had dreams of becoming a veterinary technician and was adored by her grandparents, who had helped raise her. She worked 2 jobs, one at Applebee's and another at a daycare center. People called her focused, even soft-spoken. There were no arrests, no warning signs, no bad crowd. But she had one weakness: love. His name was Joshua Camacho, and he wasn't faithful. Rachel wasn't the only girl in his life. There was another name too, Sarah Ludeman. And soon, the girls were no longer fighting for a boyfriend. They were fighting for control. Joshua bounced between the 2 girls, feeding them both lies, letting them fight over him. Rachel and Sarah began a toxic cycle of text messages, phone threats, online insults, and confrontation. One girl would show up at the other's job. They'd circle each other's homes, drive past slowly, post photos to make the other jealous. Friends warned them, parents intervened, but the obsession had already taken hold. Rachel's grades slipped, her friendships fractured. And one night, after reading another social media post about Josh and Sarah, she wrote, "I swear I'm gonna stab her." No one took it seriously, until she did exactly that. On April 14, 2009, Rachel was waiting in a friend's car when she saw Sarah drive by. Rachel followed. There was shouting, posturing, taunting. Sarah got out of her car and rushed toward Rachel. In seconds, it was over. Rachel had brought a steak knife with her. She stabbed Sarah once in the shoulder, then again, deep into her chest, puncturing her heart. Sarah stumbled back to her car, bleeding. She died at the hospital hours later. Rachel fled the scene, but the police already knew who to look for. The texts, the voicemails, the threats. They were all still on her phone. Rachel Wade was charged with second-degree murder. Her defense team argued she acted in self-defense, saying Sarah had approached first, that Rachel feared for her life. But prosecutors had a different narrative. This wasn't a spontaneous act. It was the climax of months of obsession, rivalry, and rage. They played a voicemail Rachel had left for Sarah just days earlier. "You're a fat little girl who doesn't know how to keep her man, and I'm gonna fix that for you." The jury didn't take long. Rachel was convicted and sentenced to 27 years in prison. Sarah Ludeman was just 18. She loved animals, worked with children, and had been accepted into community college. Her parents were devastated. She didn't even like to argue, her mother said. She just wanted to be loved. Rachel remains in prison in Florida. She has expressed regret, but still insists it wasn't premeditated. 2 girls, 1 manipulative boyfriend, and a community left with a hole no prison sentence could ever fill. And for the girl who thought love meant fighting, there will never be a second chance. Rage can burn in an instant, but some crimes unfold slowly, through text messages, isolation, and quiet coercion. In our next case, we explore how words alone can kill, and why Michelle Carter's texts changed the definition of responsibility forever. Michelle Carter looked like any other teenager from Plainville, Massachusetts. She was a high school senior, honor roll student, and active in her church youth group. With her blonde hair, braces, and quiet smile, Michelle was seen as sweet, maybe a little lonely, but kind-hearted. She had a circle of friends. She posted selfies with inspirational quotes. She dreamed of prom, love, and acceptance. But there was one relationship she didn't talk much about: Conrad Roy III. She met Conrad on vacation in 2012. He was shy, thoughtful, and struggling. And over time, their bond deepened, not in public, but through thousands of private texts. Conrad Roy, 18, was battling inner demons, depression, social anxiety, a previous suicide attempt. But he also had potential, a captain's license, college acceptance, a family who loved him deeply. Michelle encouraged him to get help at first, but as the years passed, their messages grew darker. They fed each other's isolation, reinforced each other's pain. In the weeks leading up to July 2014, Michelle knew Conrad was planning to take his own life. She didn't stop him. She helped him plan it, even when he got scared, even when he stepped out of the truck. Michelle texted, "Get back in," and he did. On July 13th, 2014, Conrad pulled into a Kmart parking lot in Fairhaven, Massachusetts. He sat in his truck and turned on a portable generator. Carbon monoxide filled the cab. His phone buzzed, but he never texted back. The next morning, his body was found. The medical examiner ruled it a suicide. But then came the texts. Thousands of them, discovered by investigators looking through Michelle's phone. They revealed a devastating pattern of manipulation, encouragement, and pressure. Michelle wrote, "You just need to do it. No more pushing it off. Tonight is the night." Michelle Carter was arrested in 2015 and charged with involuntary manslaughter. Her defense argued that Conrad had made his own decision. Her words, they claimed, were protected speech. But prosecutors painted a picture of a girl desperate for attention, who saw herself as Juliet and Conrad as Romeo, willing to sacrifice real life for a tragic fantasy. Michelle had texted friends that she wanted to be the grieving girlfriend, that she could be the one everyone talks about. And she got what she wanted. In 2017, a judge found her guilty. Her text urging Conrad to get back in was the tipping point. She was sentenced to 15 months in jail. Michelle Carter served 11 months and was released in 2020. She remains on probation. Conrad's family has become fierce advocates for suicide prevention and digital responsibility. His mother said, "My son could still be here." She watched him die, with her phone in her hand. The case ignited global debate. Where does encouragement end and responsibility begin? Can words kill? In Massachusetts, the court said yes. And for the boy who texted goodbye instead of getting help, there will never be another summer. It began with a post, a picture, a DM. And what unfolded was one of the first murders broadcast in real time on social media. Bianca Devins was 17, a recent high school graduate from Utica, New York. She loved makeup, fashion, video games, and anime. On Instagram and Discord, she'd built a modest following, sharing selfies with pastel filters and cryptic captions. Bianca struggled with mental health, and she was open about it. She posted about therapy, anxiety, and healing. Offline, she was shy, close to her little sister, and planning to start community college in the fall. To her online community, Bianca was magnetic, funny, edgy, artistic. To her family, she was simply B. But in a corner of the internet where admiration blurs with obsession, she caught the attention of the wrong person. Brandon Clark, 21, found Bianca through Instagram and gaming forums. They began talking. DMs turned into phone calls. Bianca believed they were friends. She sometimes called him her older brother figure, but Brandon had other ideas. He became possessive, jealous, misreading every interaction as something deeper. Bianca told friends he was intense, but mostly harmless. They agreed to meet in person for the first time at a concert in New York City on July 13th, 2019. They took photos, laughed. From the outside, nothing seemed wrong. But inside Brandon, something was brewing, a quiet rage, a belief that Bianca had betrayed him by talking to another boy. And the ride home turned deadly. As they drove back to Utica, they argued. Bianca had kissed someone else at the concert. Brandon felt humiliated, rejected, furious. When they reached a quiet, wooded road, he attacked. Brandon stabbed Bianca repeatedly, then slit her throat. He took selfies next to her body, then uploaded them to Discord and Snapchat with captions like, "Sorry." Within minutes, the images spread across the internet. People thought it was a hoax. It wasn't. He posted one final update. "I'm sorry, Bianca." Then he attempted to take his own life, live streaming part of it. Police arrived just in time to save him. Brandon was charged with second-degree murder. The evidence was overwhelming. His online confessions, the photographs, the blood still on his hands. He initially pled not guilty, then changed his plea to guilty before trial. In 2020, he was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. He is not eligible for parole until 2044. In court, Bianca's mother addressed him directly. You didn't love her, you were obsessed with controlling her, and when you couldn't, you killed her. Bianca's case led to national efforts to remove violent images from platforms and inspired new legislation, Bianca's Law, which would hold social media companies accountable for graphic content. Bianca's family now runs a foundation in her name, supporting mental health awareness and internet safety for teens. Bianca loved to paint. She journaled every day. She wore Doc Martens with butterfly laces. She had anxiety, but also hope. And for the girl who thought kindness was a shield, there will never be another post. Some crimes are born online. Others begin in the most traditional setting of all, the family home. In our final case, a preacher's daughter sneaks out before dawn, and by sunrise, her entire family is dead. Adrienne Caffy grew up in Alba, Texas, population just under 500, a town of churches, tractors, and second chances. Her father, Terry, was a devout Christian. Her mother, Penny, homeschooled the kids and played piano at church. They lived in a small white house at the end of a dirt road. Adrienne was their only daughter. She played the flute, sang hymns, got good grades. She wasn't rebellious, didn't drink, didn't sneak out, or so they thought. When she was 15, Adrienne met Charlie Wilkinson, a 19-year-old with a pickup truck and a tattoo. Her parents disapproved. He wasn't Christian. He was too old, too fast. They told her to end it. She didn't. And when they threatened to separate them, Adrienne decided if she couldn't have love, no one would. After being forbidden from seeing Charlie, Adrienne's behavior changed. She became secretive, moody, and detached. She wrote in her diary, "I want to run away. I hate them." Charlie told friends they were planning to get married. He called Adrienne his soulmate, and when Adrienne cried to him that her parents were trying to ruin her life, he promised to fix it. With fire, with bullets, with help. Charlie recruited his friend Charles Wade, and Wade brought along a girl named Bobby Johnson. All teenagers, all under the influence of anger and adrenaline. And one early morning, they drove to the Caffy house with murder in mind. It was March 1st, 2008, just after 2 a.m. Charlie, Wade, and Bobby parked a few yards from the Caffy home. Adrienne waited in the getaway car. Inside, Penny and Terry Caffy were asleep in their bed. Their sons, Matthew, 13, and Tyler, 8, were down the hall. Charlie shot Penny in the head. Wade shot Terry multiple times. He would later survive by crawling out a window and dragging himself 300 yards to a neighbor's house. The two boys were killed with swords. Before fleeing, they set the house on fire, and when it was over, Adrienne was calm. She and Charlie went to get breakfast. Terry Caffy woke up in a hospital bed, burned, bleeding, and broken. He asked where his wife and sons were. The officers didn't want to answer. Then he asked the worst question of all, "Where's Adrienne?" They told him the truth. She wasn't kidnapped. She had planned it. All 4 teenagers were arrested. Text messages, confessions, and weapons tied each of them to the crime. Charlie admitted Adrienne was the mastermind. Adrienne denied it, until her own words surfaced. "I knew what would happen. I wanted it to." Adrienne accepted a plea deal. 2 consecutive life sentences with parole eligibility after 40 years. Charlie and Wade received life without parole. Bobby Johnson was sentenced to 40 years. Terry Caffy later said, "I lost everything. My wife, my sons, my home. But I had to forgive her. She's still my daughter." He went on to become a minister, preaching about forgiveness and warning families about the dangers of unchecked teenage rebellion. Adrienne remains in a Texas prison. She will be eligible for parole in 2048 at age 56. She now claims to be reformed, a Christian again. But the house is gone. The church choir is silent. The brothers who adored her are never coming back. And for the father who forgave the unforgivable, there will never be another family photo. 10 girls, 10 stories, each more haunting than the last. These aren't legends or urban myths. They're real. They happened in neighborhoods, bedrooms, and back roads just like yours. And each reminds us, behind every innocent face, there may be a fracture no one sees. And with that, we've reached the end of the video. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and which case stayed with you the most. Thanks for watching. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.